I texted him, I called. I don't know at this point.
Okay, I'll respond
Sorry
to
to say.
Thank you. Okay.
I'm going into each room just to verify that everyone who is recording has permission to record. Ray J, were you able to start?
Oh, I realized something.
Yes, I've started the recording.
Okay, excellent. So I'm gonna leave this one and go into another.
Okay, so I think we have our marching orders for us. I realized something. I cannot text Vanessa while I'm in the chat. While I'm in a group, I can only text my group members. That's kind of
Yeah. You're in the breakout, so you only text the other people.
Okay, all right, just learned that one. Okay, so we got our marching orders. Shinwei, good morning. How are you? Your mic is off. Your mic is off.
Yeah. Good morning. I see they put me in the room with the heavy hitters.
Oh boy, I don't know about that.
That's because you're a heavy hitter.
That's
Must
right.
be.
I love that.
Right. Well, I took some notes in terms, I didn't, look at the chat to see the thing, but I had taken some notes quickly about what we need to do. And so I guess we have first addressed the type of cooperative.
Yes. Pick a type based on real business concepts. Okay, we're considering. All right. Any thoughts, anybody? Any suggestions?
Yeah, Dean Leonard.
Okay, Dean.
Grocery store.
All right.
A health food, local farm outlet.
Let's see.
I hear kind of like two different things there. Yeah, you saying
It's a
combination.
It's a combination. Remember, we're in a territory with limited population, so as diverse as we can be, I think the better.
Excellent. And for me, those are the two places that I mostly shop, to get what I need. So I'm hearing health food and agriculture, like crop.
Yeah, farm outlet. It could be crop. It could be husbandry. It could also be fishery.
To be clear, before we go much further, Shinwe, could I ask you to take notes and perhaps be our reporter? Is that okay with you? Thanks. It took so long, so I answered for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I accept.
Thank you. And I pushed you in a corner, but thanks. But Mr. Leonard, to be clear, we're speaking of a grocery type store that would provide health food type products at the same time, products from the farm, correct?
Yes, local farm industry.
Okay.
If I could ask, so would this be a co-op for the customers of the grocery store, or are you thinking of a cooperative for the farmers?
It is, again, dual purpose in my mind, having to service the community and as well be a service to the farmers and give them a viable outlet.
My mic went out when you were expressing the very last part of your question, Mr. Courtney. You were asking would it be a dual purpose for the customers, consumers, and
the producers, the farmers.
I thought so.
So you're talking about a hybrid between a producer and a consumer cooperative. Is that right?
Right. Correct.
Okay. I have a comment and a suggestion for
the hybrid between consumer and producer.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a comment and a concern, and of course, this is based on real business concepts we're considering, right? Here's my concern and my thought. Based on the number of attempts we've had in the past, right here in the VI at co-op development, based on our challenges, I want to suggest, and other people have done the same thing, to suggest that we try to begin again in a very, very small, stepwise manner, being very simple about it, and grow from there, as opposed to being a complex model. It sounds good on paper, but we are still at a point where we are growing and need to graduate. That's my comment for us to discuss.
Well, I'd love to hear you elaborate on that. You know,
What I just said?
Yes, sir, because I think this is a key component in a feasibility studies, utilizing past history, utilizing past practices. You know, if you found models that seem to be overly complicated, have not been successful in the past, then you know you should use that real world information. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why I typically am somewhat ambivalent about hybrids, because quite frankly, even here in the United States, I can't find many that work, but nonetheless, you know, people try.
Yeah, it's a beautiful concept what Mr. Leonard described. It would be beautiful for they get off the ground successfully. I'm making reference to the last initiative, the Very Farmers Cooperative, and they were doing well for a little while. They began to grow, began to get a little more complex, and then it fell apart. What I observed that they had tried to do was to be a producer cooperative, among other things. And so producers, sometimes on a common land base or on the individual sites, would produce and bring to market. They also attempted to be at the same time a service type cooperative where they got common equipment for everyone to utilize, and it just for reasons of multiple reasons, transparency, perhaps I guess I would also say lack of good organizational structure, just didn't work out for too long. It lasted about 3 solid years and then began to decline. So that's the reference I'm making. And that was a hybrid of sorts. Not that it can't work, but I guess if we keep those things in mind and how we're going to correct from the past.
That's my observation. To me, it was more of a producers, farmers co-op than it was a hybrid. Because it was just basically farmers in that cooperative that didn't work well together. But having members out of the community who all have one vote, I think it would give it more, more latitude in terms of outside input from just the farmers.
Okay.
Is it one vote that I was glad that that was clarified today, the one vote versus, I guess, equity. But is it the one vote that is the issue versus maybe the diversity of the people who become members of the cooperative? You're talking about the community. Was it like, did we cover a number of different bases so that, you know, economics, the finances were covered, marketing was covered, not only producing the agricultural crops? Because I think sometimes we may be overlooking various angles within the group that need to be met. Was there a legal entity? You know, were all those things covered?
To my understanding, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I agree with you that it was more of a producer cooperative than anything else. I do agree with you on that. And I am willing to work toward this hybrid we're talking about. I am. And looking at the past as a reference for us to correct things going forward.
That's my thoughts.
Okay. So considering time, let us stick with the model you proposed and see where we go from there. That's what I would suggest.
So the next thing is, why develop this co-op?
Okay.
Number one need is for good marketing and for farmers and producers. They would have a consistent market and they would have more time to produce and concentrate on producing, not having to worry about transportation and marketing and sales.
You're speaking about it from the producer's perspective, right?
from the producer's perspective.
Okay. So
Any other additional idea?
they'll have a ready market. There's a need for fresh food, of course.
Need for quality food.
Need for good quality food.
That's on the consumer side.
Are there other businesses in the area that are doing this already? Are there potential competitors?
There are competitors, but not in a cooperative manner. And farmers don't always get their produce in those venues.
The competitors also, the public generally speaks about the competitors just having too high a price margin, too high a profit margin, and not considering the average person's well-being enough. So that would be something to consider. And so we would have to make sure that this business enterprise can bring a better product and maybe a better price to the customers as well. But there are competitors.
Yeah, if I could, share an example, here there was a grocery store that opened in South Carolina or North Carolina called Renaissance, and they opened it up in a neighborhood in a mostly Black neighborhood across the street from a housing project. It was cooperatively owned, and they sought to provide good, healthy food to their customers. However, after the initial surge of interest, what they found over time was people in the neighborhood would bypass the grocery store across the street to go to Walmart because they recognized that Walmart had the lower prices, right? So though the food across the street was healthier, more organic, and et cetera, people would take the extra expense to travel to Walmart to get the lower prices. So I think that's one thing to consider about that. But I also think about, in terms of a hybrid model, the internal contradiction where producers want the highest prices for their commodities, whereas consumers want the lowest. So if they're in the same co-op, would they be voting against one another?
Good question.
I wanted to add that when Dean said that there were no cooperatives, I immediately agreed with that because we don't have any of that business form. But what I do believe is that the food sellers are using cooperative practices
among themselves
and are achieving economies of scale by doing so. I think the sellers almost having a monopoly on the islands and are working cooperatively, although they are not a cooperative business form. It's no doubt that they're working cooperatively. They're buying in large groups and disseminating among the stores and stuff like that. So that practice is underlying, but it's there.
That's a common sentiment, yes.
And as a result, it would require us to do some serious marketing to our community, that they invest in themselves.
Yes.
As being a member of the cooperative.
Yes. We have to have some very, very good marketing strategies to basically buy the commitment of our community as to why they should shop with us other than. And it can sometimes be a hard sell long term because, as Brother Terrence was saying, the consumer really has a limited funding level to work with and wants to get the most for it. So it can take. Go ahead. No, I was going to say it can work. It's going to take a lot more effort to make that happen.
Well, with the concept of continued education is where we would bring them into alignment with the purpose of the whole cooperative effort, as well as building some incentives like he spoke about in terms of profit sharing ideas that they would be able to benefit from as well.
Mhm.
Okay. Advantages? And I can't help but, before we move on, think of West Bay.
Yes.
I can't help but think about that.
I totally agree with you. It's the
Explain to Mr. Courtney what West Bay is all about.
From my standpoint, West Bay was a recently opened, recently defunct supermarket, large supermarket that opened in our West End near the university.
Locally owned.
Locally owned, and I don't know if they were in business for 2 years. If they were, it was just that. And I believe the support of the local market wasn't there. Location may have been an issue, but I also believe if people just in that area had supported it more, they would have been more successful. But it didn't last long at all.
In
It didn't last long.
addition to that, if they had adopt the cooperative concept and use the GERS membership as their base, where they got their financing from, I think they would have done better.
That's the other thing, Mr. Courtney. It was financed by the government employee retirement system, which is the system where all the government employees receive their pension. So it was based on a loan from that agency. And yet we weren't able to make that successful.
So did the business fail? Did it default on the loan?
I don't know the details, but I believe it did.
As far as I know, it did.
Yes.
So the investment, the retirement funds of the retirees was lost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not,
It's in jeopardy right now.
Not totally. The university did kind of bail them out to some degree.
Yeah.
The university now owns the building, as far as I understand. Is that correct, Dr. Peterson?
That is correct. That is correct. I think there were many factors involved. Of course, you mentioned location, among other factors. They were located very next door to a very low income community. I think they were hoping for a lot more support from the university community.
Well, again, I think that's one of the reasons why the outreach in the early stages is so important, because I think you want to go out and measure, what kind of support there is and build relationship with the community. That sounds very much like the Renaissance example, where maybe the prices were too high. I mean, if the grocery store is right next door, what reason would people have to not use it if the prices were reasonable? So I don't know if a feasibility study was done for that. I would hope with a project so big that it was, but a miscalculation was made, it sounds like.
Yes. Okay. So advantages versus other businesses in the area, benefits to members. Have we covered that sufficiently?
May I interject something? Is there any way of having, this is Marissa.
Yes, Melissa.
Is there any way of implementing incentives that may have helped the cooperative, whether it's consumers bringing in other consumers to the group, and based on the amount that you bring in and the length of time they stay, there might have been some type of incentive that you can give them that they would remain? I'm just curious on that aspect of it. I'm not sure.
Although I didn't say so specifically, I was making reference to incentives when I mentioned us developing a marketing strategy for this example that would really encourage the populace to support the cooperative as opposed to the other existing businesses. So incentivization has to be a big part of it. Marketing and incentivization. So I'm in agreement with you without being specific about what those incentives should be.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Okay.
Okay. If we think we've covered that sufficiently, we have about 5 more minutes to go actually. What's the potential membership base and volume of product for the project? Membership base would be in the entire community? Would it? Not be?
Yes, yes.
I would think that's your hope, but I think once you project out that large picture, you really have to narrow it, because that would be who would be your target market, because the entire community, it's easy to go and say that, but let's be real about who you're going to really target.
Yes, for example, in the session that I participated in prior, people were talking about focusing on SNAP recipients, right? So I agree with you, Miss Ozase Chinwe. I think you really, and what a feasibility study would do is hone in on the market. You can't target everybody. You have to think about, well, who really is this store for? And if we're talking about folks who are of low means or struggling with hunger, then maybe you do want to start with SNAP recipients who, get some guaranteed resources, but they need to maximize those resources in a critical way. So maybe a cooperative grocery store with low price but high quality goods would be a very good buy for folks in that position. And you can start with them. I'm just saying, start with them and grow. So that might be one way to look at it.
I think it makes a good start.
My thoughts were like the Teachers Federation, as well as the GERS members, the Government Employee Retirement System members. And that's a large group.
Could it be both? Could it be both?
Yes, definitely.
So SNAP beneficiaries as well as GRS members?
Those overlap, because if you're saying the teacher federation falls within the GRS membership, so they're one and the same. I mean, it's a subgroup. The teachers are a subgroup of GRS, especially if you're looking at the public school teachers. They are a subgroup of GRS membership.
Okay.
So they to me, they overlap.
Hello?
If they're retired, they will be under GRS. If they're not retired, they will be just the working teachers. But if you're talking of the retired teachers, they will fall under GRS.
And the others are the ones who pay into it. So they still overlap, because the teachers are who are paying into the GRS system and should be beneficiaries of it, or should see themselves as beneficiaries of it, because they're paying in so that the retirees can have that pension. So I see an overlap in there.
You just got to know that we have 6 minutes to go, okay?
Okay.
What about, hello? Julia McFarlane here. What about also including your federal employees within the community, because they carry a higher pay, and they will also, that's a support that you can count on in relations when you're looking at finances.
They also have cost of living allowance.
Yes. And with your federal employees, you got the military, you have the people at the courts. It's a lot.
So I wrote down as target market the Teacher Federation, GRS members, and federal employees.
SNAP recipients.
SNAP recipients.
Okay, we wanted to include that.
Do these communities live in proximity to one another? Would you find the teachers and the federal employees and SNAP recipients in the same neighborhood?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Okay.
That's the other thing. I think location is key.
We're on a small island. The prime locations are mid-city, but that wouldn't hinder location to the largest degree.
Transportation might be an issue.
I tend to disagree. Although we live on an island that's 32 square miles, 13 by 3, I think many people still stay within a small confine. There are people who do not go to Bordeaux and who do not go to Red Hook. They stay within pretty small confines. So I think location is very, very critical, very critical.
Location and transportation.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Does it need to be walkable?
someplace also when you're speaking about location, you want to go someplace where taxis run, also Vitron.
Good parking.
I know,
Good parking, yes.
I know people who took buses to West Bay just to support.
Not enough.
I was about to ask what,
Their, their biggest problem was management and stocking.
You mentioned a good point. They seem to not be well stocked most of the time. That was an issue. Yeah. And it was a turnoff for many people.
Did that have anything to do with the fact that they were dependent on that same group that I'm saying that
I know.
cooperative?
Many people suspected that. I don't know the answer for sure, but many people suspected that. So that's another thing we did not mention before, Mr. Courtney. Even people that wanted to support, I went in there many times, and the shelves were just not well stocked, kind of empty. So many people would not waste time and repeat a second or third time because they expect the same thing. So there was an issue.
That speaks to the other part of that question is, the volume of product needed.
Yes.
Where was that other location getting its food? Was it imported mostly, or was it locally?
Imported.
97% of the food in the Virgin Islands is imported.
97%.
Yes. So what's the answer to the question about the volume of product needed? What's the potential membership and the volume of the product? Yeah.
So do you want to change that mix, that 97%? So conceivably, if you had a grocery store up and running, where do you think would the majority of its food come from importation? Or are you attempting to create a grocery store where the majority comes from local growers?
That would be the ideal. That should be the goal. And that would make us have a niche over the current markets that exist, if that is to be achieved.
Right. Which also may mean this grocery store might need to start very small if the volume that local growers can produce, even collectively, is only going to be so much.
Yes.
Exactly, like 7 Under.
Yes, we have 1.5.
7 Under.
Everybody knows 7 Under.
1.5 minutes. 1.5 minutes to go.
Yeah.
1.5 minutes. So yes, so those are good points to make, and I think we realize that we should start small, and perhaps have the most of the product sourced locally for that reason.
Yeah. So I guess that speaks to the fitting in your local market. If you can find a niche for yourself just for local people, you might not one big superstore. You may make a couple or a half dozen small neighborhood stores.
Yes, and grow from
that
there.
Are walkable for people.
So the response then, Shinwe, when it comes to the business, how it fits into the local, the idea is to create a niche market where most of the products sold are from locally sourced as opposed to imported. The last question, what are the financial and organizational needs for the project? We have 30 seconds to go.
For one of the biggest questions.
Yep. Financial and organizational needs. Well, a need for overhead depending on what the location is going to be.
The location, a building.
Yeah. Unless there's a member.
And let's not forget working capital.
Yes.